I went into the study of economics hoping that I'd be able to do something useful, and I grew up in a household watching my dad as a labor lawyer working on very practical and very important problems, and I loved his professionalism and his ethics and his ability to look at a real situation, both understand the theory and the concepts around it, but the practical details. And so that kind of formation definitely had a huge effect on me. When I started studying, I didn't know how I would follow that line of thinking and action. And when I started to visit developing countries in the late 1970s, still as a graduate student, I was just amazed, and I thought, gee, I'd really like to do something to help the poor and help the process of development. The real opportunity for me started in 1985. I was 5 years by then on the faculty at Harvard. I was writing a lot of articles and I think had a successful but somewhat conventional academic trajectory, and I was invited at that point to go to the country of Bolivia, which was in economic turmoil, invited by a former student, and luckily I took up the challenge and really found the experience to be a life changer. I learned things day by day that I could never have learned in a classroom, and I felt my learning curve was extraordinary. What I had been trained to know, and also what I'd been writing was maybe half right, and I had left out a big part of reality that I was quickly gaining, and I started reading like crazy. Not so much economics, but politics and sociology and culture and history and other things to round out my knowledge. And it just happened that I followed my interests, got extremely interested in the question of combining practice and theory, and the interbalance between the two, and how practice can inform theory, and theory, of course, is vital for good practice. And one thing led to another. I worked throughout Latin America in the second half of the 1980s. Then, almost by accident, I was invited to come to Poland at the start of the revolutions of 1989, which reestablished democracy and market economies to Eastern Europe, and I was able to play a major role there. Then I worked in Russia and the former Soviet Union from 1991 to 1994, and from there each step opened up a new facet of my career, my thinking, my understanding. So accident, but still guided by the idea that the tools that I had and that I was learning to apply should really help. This wasn't a game. This wasn't an academic exercise. My goal in life was not to publish articles, although publishing articles was a part of what I wanted to do and part of what I needed to do for honing my skills. I wanted to create and be able to use a set of tools that could make a difference. And I just never felt that there was any other purpose, basic purpose of what I was doing other than being able to create something that could be useful in the world. And by 1995, I had taken over directorship of an institute at Harvard, and that took me to Africa. I was by then already regularly visiting China and Korea, Japan, and India. And the more I saw, the more I understood what some of the biggest crises on the planet really were. The crises of the AIDS pandemic, which for me was almost theoretical until I started working in Africa. A crisis of malaria, which I had thought had been almost banished in history books until I started working in Africa. The crisis of extreme hunger and chronic hunger. These were things I didn't really know till I saw them. And it also led me to understand at each step that I needed to see things with my own eyes. My imagination just wasn't good enough. Otherwise, I didn't really understand how the world worked. I couldn't imagine from the classroom or from the books or from the newspapers what was really important. So I guess walking through open doors has been a a constant part of this. And the world's weird, dazzling, amazing, interconnected, beyond expectation, beyond the sheer power of reason, at least my reason. I have to see it to understand it. I have to feel it. I have to get engaged. And that has been how I've comported my professional life for the last quarter century.